Immerse yourself in a story where pain becomes strength and betrayal becomes the beginning of a new journey. Learn how one man, having lost everything, finds inner freedom and rises from the ashes. This drama will change your perception of life and make your heart beat faster. James Harris always considered himself a strong person. He grew up in noisy New York, where the rhythm of life never stops, and the lights of the big city beckon with their irrepressible energy. However, behind the external confidence and apparent success, there was a mental pain that he had long hidden even from himself. On that fateful evening, everything changed. James was sitting in his small apartment in Manhattan, watching the rain knocking on the windows, as if trying to tell him something important. His thoughts wandered between memories of happy days and the bitter pain of loss that had long settled in his heart. He remembered how he had once loved Sarah, a woman with whom he had shared dreams and hopes, creating the appearance of an ideal life. But the years of marriage had turned into an endless series of disappointments. With each passing day, an invisible gap arose between them, which could not be overcome by any conversations or attempts to return to the past. In the evenings, when the city outside the window turned into a kaleidoscope of lights and shadows, James increasingly felt his inner world begin to crumble. He felt as if every drop of rain washed away the remnants of who he was, leaving only emptiness and loneliness. The story will continue now. Before I continue, I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me make better content. Share your emotions in the comments. That evening, sitting at the table with cold coffee, James realized for the first time the depth of his pain. His thoughts rushed between memories of happy moments and the bitterness of betrayal that overtook him at the most unexpected moment. Memories of how Sarah left later and later, how their conversations became shorter, how her eyes reflected less and less interest in their common future. All this merged into one impenetrable darkness. Why couldn't I notice this before? He thought, trying to find an explanation for everything. Words that he had avoided saying out loud for so long sounded in his head, but now they became an unbearable reality. Reflecting on the betrayal, James felt his self-esteem slowly but surely crumbling. He recalled a conversation when his heart was squeezed with pain, and his voice trembled from the realization that the person he loved was alien and inaccessible. "You cheated on me, and it's been going on for too long," he said then, and these words echoed in his soul. But it was at that moment, when the pain seemed unbearable, that a thought arose in his head. It was time to change something. He understood that he could no longer live in a state of constant internal crisis, in a state when every morning began with emptiness and fear of the unknown. James decided that he would no longer allow fear to paralyze him. He began to analyze every step he took, every word he said to Sarah. A desire to understand himself, to understand the true causes of this devastating crisis, was born in his mind. He knew that for an American public accustomed to dynamism and introspection, his story could be a revelation, a reflection of the struggle that many people face. In this struggle between duty and emotion, between the past and the present, James sought answers to questions that had tormented him for years. That evening, as the rain washed away the last of the day's dust from the streets of New York, he felt that it was time for a change. A desire to restore what had been lost burned within him, even if it meant facing the most painful memories. Every beat of his heart told him that he could no longer remain a passive observer of his own life. It was at that moment that he made a fateful decision to begin the path to healing, even if it was a long and painful process. This determination became the first step toward regaining control of his destiny, and perhaps finding again the love that once warmed his soul. Thus began a new chapter in James's life, full not only of suffering, but also of hope for a better future, where even the deepest wounds can heal over time, giving way to new sensations and discoveries. The next morning, James woke up to the sound of pouring rain that had been pouring down for days. The light gloom outside the window mixed with the feeling of emptiness inside, left by the past betrayal. He felt that it was time to look at his life without embellishment, to understand where exactly the turning point had occurred, and perhaps to find that spark that once made his heart beat faster. It was then, in the chaos of his morning thoughts, that an idea came to him: to start keeping a journal. He decided to write down every emotion, every word spoken by himself and those around him, so that over time he could trace the chain of events that led to his current state. James felt that his soul needed healing, and although the past left unhealed wounds, he believed that there was still power to change inside him. His notes became full of detailed descriptions of his inner experiences: pain, anger, disappointment, and at the same time a quiet hope for the best. He wrote about how every meeting with people, every casual conversation on the streets of New York exposed hidden sides of his personality, forcing him to reconsider his previous beliefs. It was through these notes that he tried to find answers to the questions that had long tormented him. Who am I? Why did I allow betrayal to destroy my dreams? And how can I regain the lost control over my life? Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. James gradually learned to live with the pain, gradually turning it into fuel for internal transformation. He visited a therapist, participated in support groups, where he shared his experiences with people who were facing similar crises. Each meeting, each word of support helped him understand that he was not alone in his suffering. His journal became a mirror reflecting the complexity of his inner world. In this mirror, he saw not only his pain, but also the possibility of change, a chance for a new life, where the past did not dictate the rules of the future. One rainy evening, when the sky was covered with heavy clouds, James met his old friend Robert in a cozy cafe on the corner of one of the narrow streets of Manhattan. Robert, always sincere and understanding, listened attentively to his friend's story, his deep feelings, and tossing between despair and hope. "You have to give yourself a chance, James," Robert said. "Sometimes in order to grow, you first have to survive the hardest storm." These words, which sounded so warm and encouraging, made James think, is it not time to let go of the past and open the door to the future? That evening, when he returned home, he sat down at his desk and began writing a letter to himself. In it, he described all the pain, all the anger, but also the quiet spark that still warmed his heart. He wrote about his mistakes, about the betrayal that destroyed his idea of love, and how long he searched for an answer in the darkness of his thoughts. Each word, like a living picture, drew new perspectives before him, made it possible to see that behind the wreckage of the past, there could be a bright future. In this letter, he promised himself that he would never again allow anyone to encroach on his peace of mind. He promised that he would seek the truth within himself, that he would learn to forgive not in order to justify someone else's mistake, but to free himself from the burden of the past. In every line, in every sigh written on paper, there was a desire to regain his lost dignity, to find inner harmony, and to believe again in the possibility of a new love, love for oneself, above all. The night brought James the long-awaited realization. The crisis that seemed impassable to him became the starting point on the path to self-healing. He felt that right now his true awakening was beginning. With every written word, with every moment of pain experienced, he gained more and more confidence that he could get out of this labyrinth of loneliness and emptiness. This struggle, filled with fear, anger, but also quiet hope, made him stronger, forced him to look at himself from a new angle, where the past became not a chain, but only part of the path to freedom. James understood that the American soul, so accustomed to change and constant struggle, is capable of overcoming any difficulties. His story is the story of how, When faced with the darkest aspects of life, a person can discover within himself a source of strength and wisdom that will help him to regain the joy of being. Several months passed, and James's life began to take on new colors. He greeted each new day with cautious hope, as if afraid of losing the fragile balance he had begun to find within himself. His inner world was gradually transforming. Pain gave way to reflection, and disappointment to new plans for the future. He walked more and more often along the busy streets of New York, observing life around him and feeling how every face, every look, reflected the same struggle for meaning and hope that was taking place in his soul. One day, while sitting in a park near Central Park, James met a young artist named Emily. Her paintings were full of emotion. Each brushstroke spoke of pain, love, and redemption. Emily was an unexpected discovery for him. Her view of the world, her ability to see beauty even in the darkest moments of life, inspired him to believe that change was possible. In her stories about her own experiences, he saw a reflection of his soul, and this instantly brought them closer. At first, their conversations were cautious, almost timid, like the first rays of dawn after a long night. But gradually, something more emerged between them. A quiet but confident connection based on a mutual understanding of pain and a desire for healing. Emily told James how she had experienced her losses and how art had helped her recuperate. Her words, filled with warmth and sincerity, awakened in him a desire to look at life differently, to see in every trial not only the bitterness, but also the chance for a new beginning. In those days, James began to spend a lot of time with Emily. Together they visited art exhibitions, walked through museums, where each picture caused a storm of emotions and made him think about the depth of the human soul. These meetings became a real salvation for him. He began to believe again in the possibility that even after the strongest betrayal, you can find light at the end of the tunnel. New entries appeared in his diary. Words about how important it is not to give up, how important it is to rediscover the joy of life despite all the wounds of the past. One evening, as the golden lights of sunset painted the sky above the city, James and Emily sat on the roof of one of the old buildings, enjoying the silence and beauty of the moment. There was a special magic in the air, as if the whole world had stopped to give them a chance to open up. James, feeling his heart begin to open, decided to tell Emily about his pain, about how long he had lived in the shadow of loss and betrayal. His voice trembled, but the words flowed freely, like cleansing water. He spoke of how every blow of fate made him doubt himself, how he felt alone even in the midst of millions of people, and how he finally found the strength to believe that change was possible. Emily listened intently, her eyes shining with tears and sympathy. She realized that behind his every word there was not only pain, but also great hope for the future. In response, she gently placed her hand on his and said, "You have already taken the first step toward healing. There is strength in each of us to rise up, even when the world around us seems to be in ruins." These words, simple and sincere, became a signal to James that he was not alone, that even after the deepest wounds, there can be a time of rebirth. As time went on, James's life gradually improved. He still felt pain, but it was no longer destructive. It had become part of his journey, a teacher who showed him the importance of forgiving and moving forward. His inner crisis, which had once seemed insurmountable, had become a source of strength that allowed him to look at the world from a new perspective. He understood that the American soul, tempered by trials, was capable of transformation, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Emily and James became each other's support. Together they discussed books, films, music, everything that could inspire new dreams and hopes. Their conversations were filled with deep meaning and understanding, and each meeting left warmth and light in the soul. For James, this was the period when he began not just to live, but to learn to love life again, despite all its trials. He increasingly thought about the fact that even after the most devastating blows of fate, it is possible to find a way to healing. Every new meeting, every word of support reminded him that life goes on, and in it you can always find a place for new love, for new dreams, for a new beginning. The time had come for a final change. James, having gone through the thorns of pain, betrayal, and loss, felt that a new life had been born in his soul. Now he was no longer the person who passively accepted the blows of fate. He became an active creator of his reality, having managed to survive the deepest wounds and turn them into a source of strength. His path, long and winding, led him to the understanding that true healing begins within, when a person learns to forgive not only others, but also himself. One cool autumn evening, when the wind quietly whispered about the change of seasons, James gathered all his strength and decided to part with the past forever. He returned to that small apartment in Manhattan where it all began, and, closing the door behind him, symbolically cut himself off from that world where pain and betrayal reigned. Every step along the old corridors, every familiar echo in the corners seemed to him like echoes of a former life. But now he looked at them with cold determination and understanding that everything that was will remain behind. At the table that had once served as his refuge, James opened a new notebook and began writing a letter to his future self. In this letter, he outlined everything, all the mistakes, all the falls, and most importantly, the enormous strength that helped him rise after each blow of fate. He wrote about how important it is to learn to appreciate moments of silence, when the soul rests from the endless struggle, how important it is to be able to find joy in the little things, and finally, to forgive yourself for all the mistakes you made. In every word, in every line, there was a sincere belief that a new life is not just an escape from pain, but a conscious choice to love yourself and move forward no matter what. In the letter, he reminded himself that every loss, every betrayal leaves a mark, but it is precisely these scars that make a person stronger, wiser, and more capable of feeling. He wrote, "I will no longer be afraid of change, because in every ending there is a beginning of something new. I am ready to accept my fate, no matter how hard it may be, and to move on, proudly carrying the lessons of the past." These words became for him a manifesto of a new life, a symbol of liberation from the shackles of pain and fear. The next day, James met Emily, and their meeting became the culmination of the journey he had taken in recent months. In a cozy cafe, bathed in the soft light of the early morning, they sat at a table by the window and shared their dreams for the future. Emily, with her unquenchable faith in the beauty of the world, said, "Each of us carries a piece of pain, but it is this that makes us who we are. I see in you the strength that many dream of." These words, spoken with sincerity and love, became for James a confirmation that his path was not in vain. Their dialogues included not only memories of the past, but also plans for the future, filled with hope, creativity, and faith in the best. James realized that his life, like the life of every person, consisted of many facets, and even if one side was wounded, others could shine with new colors. He began to see in each new day an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to find new love for himself, for the world, for life. In the evening, under the starry sky of New York, James walked the streets, feeling how each step filled him with strength. He realized that betrayal, loss, and inner emptiness were only part of his journey, necessary in order to learn to appreciate true freedom. This freedom was not in running away from pain, but in the ability to turn it into fuel for new achievements. Every passerby, every light in the windows of old buildings reminded him that life goes on, and each of us is capable of starting over, despite any difficulties. At the end of his inner journey, James realized that true healing comes when a person accepts his vulnerability, when he stops fighting himself and begins to live in harmony with his soul. He turned to the future with a strong determination, ready to take on new challenges, discover unknown horizons, and give the world the love he had accumulated through years of pain and struggle. Thus ended James's journey, not as a tragedy, but as a triumph of the human spirit, capable of turning darkness into light and pain into strength. His story became a testament to the fact that every crisis, no matter how devastating it may seem, contains within it the seeds of future prosperity, if only we dare to believe in ourselves and move forward.